This is Dice Throne. Dice Throne is a Yahtzee style game where you are rolling dice and you get to roll them and re-roll them up to 2 additional times, so a total of 3 times. And essentially you are matching up those dice to an action that's going to allow you to do damage to your opponent. Dice Throne is meant to be a head-to-head kind of a battle game where you're playing cards out, rolling your dice, and just attempting to get your opponent down to 0 health. What's really nice about Dice Throne is, one, there's a way to play Dice Throne in a very basic mode in order for you to learn the game and or learn a character. As you can see here, I've got just 3 characters on screen here, but there's actually 24 total characters in the Dice Throne universe at the time. The next great thing about Dice Throne is the entry point to the game can be very small. If you simply want to try out the game, go to Target or Barnes & Noble or Amazon or your friendly local game store, pick up one of these battle packs, which is just 2 opponents. So perfect for you and your partner to pick from, and you can see everything you need to play the game with 2 players is right here on the box, including the complexity of the characters. So if you're starting out, you may not pick this box because it's got 2 level 5 characters. Let's now take a look at how to play basic Dice Throne, followed by how to step up your game and play full-fledged Dice Throne using our friend the Moon Elf here. All right, so to play a beginner game of Dice Throne, the only thing you're going to need is your player board, your health dial set to whatever amount of health you and your opponent wants to play to. So a pretty short game is to 30 health. You can make it as much health as you want as long as both parties start at the same health. You also want to have your little leaflet here for your actual character. And before you start playing, it's always a good idea to read as much of this as you can, especially what all of the various status effects do. So review this side. If you have any questions, a lot of times they're answered on this side of the sheet, and you're going to want to keep this handy. If you want to, you can go ahead and take your tokens and stack them up. You don't have to, you can keep them off to the side. It's up to you. All right, so in Dice Throne, the goal of the game is to roll out your dice. These are custom dice specific to your character, which means these symbols are going to be unique to your character. If you look at the front side here, you'll see the distribution of the symbols, and then there's 1 through 6 on those symbols as well. Your objective when you roll out the dice is to match one of these sets that you can see here on your board. So some of them may be symbol related. For example, here is 3 arrows and 2 moons. This would essentially be any combination of 1s, 2s, and 3s, and then 2 6s. Or sometimes you'll see where it's, say, a small straight. This is when you're looking at the numbers. So to do a small straight, you would need to, say, for example, do 1, 2, 3, 4. A large straight would be all 5 of them in order. You cannot skip. There cannot be a break in the order if you are doing a straight. Again, a small straight just uses 4 dice. A large straight just uses all of them, but you could do your straight like that. Most boards also have a green section, which is going to be your defensive ability. This is not something you're going to focus on when it's your turn, when you are actually making your attack. So you're going to take your dice, you're going to roll them out, and you're going to take a look at them. You're going to see, is there anything out here? I actually have, right off the bat, rolled a covered shot. So I could go ahead and gain an evasive token and deal 7 damage. That's not bad. But maybe I want to go for something bigger. Maybe, I rolled this, and I've got a 3, 5, and a 6. And I'm thinking, well, or a 2. Maybe I can turn this into a 4. So I can take a look at that. All of a sudden now I have a large straight. So when you roll out your dice, you may choose to set aside any number of dice, pick up any ones you want, and roll them again. And then you can do this a third time. You can choose any number of dice, even the ones you set aside previously. You can pick one to all of them up or none of them up and roll them out a third time. This is akin to the classic game Yahtzee. Yahtzee, you got to roll your dice out 3 times, stopping at any point, saving any dice that you so choose along the way, and re-rolling any number that you so choose. But after your third roll, you're stuck with what you've got. Once you're done rolling, then you're going to decide what, if any, of these actions can you take by matching up either the symbols on the dice or if you have created a straight. The best ability on every single character's board is going to be 5 6s. That's your ultimate ability. Very hard to get to, but it is there. So when you have determined what action you're going to take, you would simply say to your opponent, I'm going to, in this case, you would inflict a status effect on them. So in this case, entangled, which is probably a negative status effect that you would put on them. And then you would say, I'm doing 7 damage. Okay? Sometimes here, like gain evasive, that's a positive status effect. You would put that on yourself. If you were inflicting entangled, you would give that to the opponent and they would put it on their board. After you have chosen what you're going to, what action you're going to take against your opponent, they would then take that damage, but then they have a chance to reduce that damage or possibly hit you back or gain status effects themselves based on their defensive role. So after you have attacked someone, then they, whoever's turn it is not, would look here to, if they have a green section which says defensive roll here, it'll tell you, okay, defensive roll 5 dice. You're still rolling your same dice. So once you have completed your turn and then the person is attacking you back, if you are playing as the Moon Elf, you get to roll all 5 dice. And then you are simply taking a look at the symbols. You only get to roll your defense once. You don't get to do the whole Yahtzee style aspect on defensive rolls. So here I have rolled 2 feet. So here it says on 2 feet, I get to prevent half the damage rounded up. And then for every 2 arrows, I would deal 1 damage in return. Well, I didn't roll any. Well, I rolled 1 arrow, but I needed 2. And these 2 moons actually don't do anything for me. But these 2 feet actually allowed me to reduce half of that damage. So if I say was taking 7 damage, I would reduce 4 of it because it's prevent half the damage rounded up. When you are playing on basic mode, if you ever come across an icon like this one, for example, that says 1 CP times the number of moons. So when you complete an exploding arrow action, once you have hit all of these symbols and completed your roll phase, you actually are going to roll your 5 dice again, and then similar to your defense, you're going to get stuff based on the symbols that you see on a single roll. In this case, you're gaining CP for each moon symbol. Well, when you're playing basic, you don't use CP, so you would simply ignore that line there. CP is tracked on this dial here, and in the second phase of this video where we talk about how to take your dice throwing game to the next step, we'll talk about what combat points are. But just wanted you to see, if you happen to see that symbol, you can just ignore it for now. The last type of space you may see on a player board, even on basic mode, is a passive ability. So these are going to be purple squares. They're going to have this little Meeple symbol in their corner, very similar to the defensive ability. They're always going to be purple, but passive abilities don't have a set of symbols that you're trying to match. That's because this effect is always in play, and if you meet the criteria listed here, you can then take that action or gain that benefit. So for example, the Paladin here says you may re-roll 1 of your dice at any time for 1 CP per re-roll. You may draw 1 card at any time for 3 CP per card. So again, right now we're not playing with CP, so this passive ability doesn't really do much for you, but in a few seconds here we're going to talk about combat points and how to play with them. So it's recommended that if you are playing Dice Throne for the very first time, or if you are experiencing a character for the first time and your opponent is as well, it's best to play a beginner game like we just discussed, where all you're focused on is rolling the dice, matching up the symbols to complete an action, and focused on taking your opponent's health down to 0. When you are ready to play the full game of Dice Throne, the only thing you're going to need to add to your game here is your combat points dial and your personal deck of cards here. Now, these cards are sleeved in special sleeves so I can keep track of them. Most of them all look like this on the back. When you are setting up a regular game of Dice Throne, you're going to set your combat points dial to 2. You're going to set your health dial again to whatever health you and your opponent decide to play from. You're going to take your deck of cards here, you're going to shuffle it up, and you're going to draw a starting hand of 4 cards. So, here are various types of cards. We have one type here that is an upgrade card. Then we have a few an instant action card, as well as some other cards that we can play. You can see here during the roll phase action. So let's talk about what these cards do. In order to play these cards, we need to spend combat points. You can see here this one is free. I could play this at any given time as long as it's during my roll phase. All right, but this one again is also free and I could play it anytime. This one's going to cost me 2 combat points. So I start the game with 2. I could immediately spend those 2 and play this card if I want. In this case, I could change the value of any one die. So obviously I would play this during my roll phase after I've rolled out my dice. Let's see, I've got a 2, 3, 4, 5. I could play So Wild, change this to a 6, and instantly have a large straight. The last thing is your upgrade cards. So again, this one costs you 2 CP, so let's say we spend our CP on this one as well. You'll notice that this one has the same name as one of your actions already on the board. So what this card becomes is an upgrade to your actual board. When you spend the combat points, you're going to play it down on your board and it's going to stay there. It's a permanent fixture of your board. So if you take a closer look here, you'll notice that this longbow was dealing 4 damage for a set of 3, 5 damage for a set of 4, or 7 damage for all of your dice showing the arrow symbol. What we've added here is an extra damage at 4, an extra damage at 5, and now on 4 of a kind, so you're looking at the numbers, you would inflict Entangled. So again, once you pay the combat points, you're going to play that down, and now it's a permanent upgrade to your board. There are also sometimes, and not with every character, but some characters even have additional upgrades for certain cards. So you can see here, this is the Longbow 3, which given the cost to pay for that, I could play Longbow 3 down. Now, you can go ahead and pay the increased CP to jump straight to Longbow 3, or if you already had Longbow 2 down, to upgrade to Longbow 3, you actually only have to pay the difference of the 2 cards, so that would be 1 CP to get to there. So I could go straight to, say, Exploding Arrow 3 by paying 3 CP. Also, some characters, but again, not all, have upgrades for their defensive roles as well. So, how do you get combat points? Obviously, we've talked about how you spend it. Well, since you now have cards that you are keeping up with, let's say this is our starting hand, at the beginning of your turn, except for the very first turn of the first player, there's no payment phase, income phase for the first player on the first turn. But after that, you start your turn by gaining a combat point automatically and drawing a card. Okay, you can have up to 7 cards in your hand. So at this point, we're well beneath that limit, and there is no limit to the amount of combat points. I believe this dial goes all the way up to 15, so I think actually that is the limit, is 15 combat points. There's also then times where we talked about earlier down here, Exploding Arrow allows you to gain a CP for the amount of moons you roll on the dice. So here I would gain 1 CP, like so. And there's also times where you could pay cards, like getting paid. It's a free card, and it would gain you 2 CP. That then is pretty much how you ramp up the game to play full Dice Throne. All you're doing is adding in these cards, and how you spend the cards and play the cards is by spending combat points, which you accumulate each turn, just like you draw a card, or through other various effects, playing cards, completing certain actions, so on and so forth. Again, the name of the game is still to get your opponent down to 0 health. Once you do that, you win the game. The last thing that needs to be discussed about playing true Dice Throne, and this is easily the most complicated part of the game, and you could easily play with or without it, is the type of damage that you can deal to an opponent. So you'll notice that, for example, here it says, then deal 4 damage, and the 4 is within a black circle. Or down here, you can see that the defensive ability is dealing 1 damage, and it's in a red circle. Same with your ultimate ability, the 12 is within a red circle. Long story short, if it's red, it's undefendable, which means the person does not get to roll their defense for it. They cannot block it anyway. If it's a black number or within a black circle, then it is defendable, and they're going to be able to roll for defense. Now, there are some nuances to that, and if you have purchased a game, every single copy of the game is going to come with a rules of play, and on page 10, it's going to give you a breakdown of the various types of damage, because there is avoidable, undefendable, normal, collateral, pure, things like that, as well as your ultimate damage. Just so you know, if you do happen to hit on an ultimate, people cannot defend against it. They cannot reduce it with card effects. They cannot, make you change your die or anything like that. So it is truly the ultimate attack. Again, this is easily the most complicated portion of the game. You could simply just say that all attacks are defendable, or simply say if it's in red, you don't roll for defense, to keep it simple. If you want to know the full rules, check out your rule book. And that's going to do it for basically the entire gamut of starting with a tutorial game of Dice Throne, and then getting used to your character and playing full Dice Throne against any number of opponents. The game is designed to play head-to-head, so you and just another person sitting across the table from you. But you can play 3-player mode, where it's kind of like a King of the Hill scenario. You can play teams, 2 versus 2. You can actually even play this game up to 6 people, all sitting around the same table. Those rules, again, are all included in your rules of play booklet that comes in your box. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer those as quickly as I can. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.